Hello, good morning, and welcome to Celebrate Southern Africa. Today, I'm talking to Gavin Prinsloo, who lives in the Cape, and he is a poet. Now, poetry is something I have really struggled with. When I was at school, I remember my English teacher, Mrs. van Aswegen, saying to us, so what do you think the poet means when they talk about the green grass? And I was like, green grass? Like, it didn't seem to have anything more for me. But as I've grown older, I've realized the power poetry can have. And Gavin is one of those poets who has also discovered the cathartic kind of process that poetry writing is. So welcome, Gavin. It is lovely to have you on Celebrate.
Nice to be here. Thanks, Dawn.
I have always been fascinated about what poetry really is, because it seems to have quite a loose definition. So if you want to share with us what your definition is of poetry, that would be great.
Don't be honest, the word poetry, it's so broad that it's very difficult to define the form of poetry. If you look at the actual person, if you read, to them, poetry is something different to what you believe it to be. Whether it's freestyle or sonnets or whatever the case, it's the person sharing expression, the people bringing out emotion and putting into words, or trying to describe a situation or the environment around them in words without going into too much detail, keeping it short, sweet, and emotive. For me, poetry is more of, like you said, the beautiful word, catharsis. I have suffered from the time 2020 onwards terribly with mental health issues. And I actually started writing in 2020. It's only been 3 years, it hasn't been that long. And where that stemmed from was the need to be able to put what was on my mind, what was actually germinating in my mind and my emotions out there, so not only other people can see what I'm trying to say, but that I can also see what I'm trying to say. Put it into context to make it understandable and relatable to me. And I've actually found that by doing that, I've had the ability to share my thoughts with others. And I think that is poetry in a nutshell. It's not a story, not a saga. It's nothing but pure emotion, pure thought.
Wow.
Please put very succinctly, very straightforwardly, and very personally from one person onto paper for another to interpret or to try to understand what the poet is trying to say. What you said there is very true. I had the same problem with poetry at school. We had the English teacher, I remember Mrs. Spengler, that was in primary school. You should also give us poems and say, listen, tell us what it means, etc. And at that stage as well, I couldn't look at it and say, I can actually relate or whatever. In high school, we did poetry as well. I couldn't really relate. You've got to have lived through something and experienced something to be able to absorb the meaning of the words.
Oh, that's a good point.
Poetry is very relatable. Yeah. It's not just subjective, it's very objective as well. What's important to you in poetry is not important maybe to me. But those people that it does connect with, even if it's one person that it connects with, the poet has achieved what he wants to do. So
and I mean, you would have an intention when you write the poem, because it is in that moment for you what you're feeling. But if someone reads it and interprets it in a different way and takes something different away from it, then that's okay as well.
That's a bonus. That is the utter bonus. If there could be a contradictory interpretation to my words, and the appreciation is there still for the words, whether they've accepted my thoughts or not, there was value to it. So if that's the case, I'm happy.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
I'm actually, to be very honest with you, I don't know if the word contemplative emotional poet would be the word to use. I would sit and I would see something, or I hear something and I feel something. And I take my my phone and I start typing. And to be very honest with you, there's not really a thought process involved. It's basically input and output when it comes to poetry, with me personally. And I think a lot of poets operate on that same that precept of, as you so nicely put it, in that moment. That is the important part, that specific moment when those thoughts are put down and penned down onto, whether it's paper or on a cell phone or a computer. But those particular moments is where the value lies. That is where the value of the poetry is carried over to the next person. Yeah, I think at that moment is the most genuine thought and emotion that you can put across, because you're experiencing it.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I find it's a hell of a gift to be able to express that momentary urge in words to somebody else. It happened once, okay, once and once only. I cannot get an emotion and then later go back and write about that emotion. I can't do that. It's got to be now. It's in the moment. Put it down. Once I've got it down, I very seldom change it. Because to change it would devalue it. Okay, so a lot of my poetry people always say, but there's a little bit of a syntax contradiction here, or they don't quite understand why I'm jelling the words or whatever. Remember, poetry is for me. What I'm sharing with you is for me. Okay, so going back to you again, what you said, interpretation. It all depends on how you're looking at it, how you're understanding it, what you're feeling from it. Because that, to me, is the most important part, to create that emotive feeling. I have found that I've got the gift of doing that. It's not so much the writing, it's to be able to express the emotion or express that immediate thought. I'm busy writing 2 books as well, and I'm finding it very different, very different to actual writing poetry, because there you've got to sit and you've got to plot it out, you've got to work it out, you've got to write it out. Poets don't really do that. That's not what they do. Okay?
Yeah.
They don't plan. It is an instinctive reaction to thought and emotion. And that instinctive reaction, it is an instinctive emotion, thought and action that gets placed into context through words.
I love that.
So that's my interpretation. Okay.
Love it, love it. So Gavin, just what I'm going to do is, because your internet's a little bit patchy. Do you want to just maybe turn your camera off, and then we can carry on the conversation? That would be great.
Perfect. Give me a sec, eh?
Okay.
Basically just stop video, eh?
Yeah, just stop video. Yeah.
Give me a second.
I can do it from this side if you. Oh, there we go. Let's see if that might be better. Okay, so that, I'm kind of inspired now to kind of look at poetry differently, because the fact that it is so in the moment means that the message will only be relevant to me if it speaks to me in my moment as well.
Exactly. Also put into context that moment that you're talking about could have happened already, but the emotion is still there, where it gets triggered again by the words that you're reading. It could have happened 10 years ago. It could have happened 20 years ago. I've actually had a couple of cases where people say, I can so relate to this. It happened to me 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But the words, now I'm only understanding what I went through then. So there's no time constraint on meaning or on the effect of the poetry. Poetry is ageless, it's timeless. I think there's a lot of poets that I still read today from 100 years ago. I read quite a lot of the classics, and I tend to write in the classic form a lot as well. I love it, the Old English classics. But things that they referred to, things that they experience, emotions they experience, are very relevant to me too.
Absolutely, because the human condition hasn't changed. I mean, we still have the same struggles with relationships. We still have the same struggles with confidence and how we feel our place is important in the world. That's not changed for millennia.
It hasn't changed at all. It hasn't.
Yeah.
Even the situations, not only us in context of human beings, individuals, but even a society. Technology may have advanced, but the basics remain the same. We still have war. We still have hunger. We still have famine. We still have that never ends. Okay, all those motivators for poetry are still there. All right. So what somebody would have written 100 years ago, still very relevant today.
Yeah.
Extremely relevant. And I think if you put a lot of poetry in context, really in context, I think you put it so nicely, the human condition. That is just basically the human condition that's trying to explain. It's just trying to give some context to.
So now when you were at school, did you ever dream that you would putting next to your name poet?
Can I tell you something honestly? I can, and guys out there, please don't hit me with this, okay? I know I use the title poet, but I find it difficult to accept the fact that I am a poet. To me, I feel more like a person that's got something to say. I know most poets dealt with mental health issues. Most poets went too late in their lives before they managed to publish or got recognition. Most poets were very broken people. To be honest, they were very human. So for me to use the word poet in that context as a poet, it doesn't really ring with me. I am a person that writes emotion and thought. That's where I see myself, not as a poet.
Wow, that's really interesting, because I think poet puts you into a box, and being a poet isn't being in a box. It isn't a box thing.
If you really think about it, so-called poets are very non-conformist. They tend to rub against the grain of normality or normalcy in society. Most people, put it this way, won't write about their personal emotions. Most people are afraid to pen what's on their minds onto paper. Most people are afraid to speak like we are speaking now. They're terrified of it.
Yeah.
Because it allows them to become vulnerable. Now, there is no person that writes emotive writing like poetry that is not vulnerable. They are. But they're brave enough to put down what they are thinking and what they are feeling.
I think writing in itself is very brave. I mean, I know that people feel, so when I was a teacher and the class was naughty, I would just pick up a pen and start writing. I wasn't actually writing anything about the kids, but they're like, what are you writing? And I'm like, well, I'm just making notes about your behavior. Oh no, you can't do that. Because it feels permanent. It feels like it's in stone now, and there's nothing you can do about it, which is a really interesting concept. I also I noticed that you use the word awakening. One of your books is about awakening, eros, and
yes.
all of the kind of, I think the word awakening is another definition that I would add to being a poet, because it is about finding something and making it alive.
No, I agree with you. Although in context, that book was actually, the name was based for the book on Eros, as in mythology, that awoke to this kind of mystical, sensual poetry that I was writing. Okay, it's extremely, how can we say, adult based. Okay, but I agree with you. The word awakening in itself in poetry is probably one of the most important words you can actually try to define. It takes some kind of trigger to break open the restraint of the mind, to be able to say what's on your mind or what's in the emotion in writing.
Yeah, I love that.
I think for a writer, a normal writer, to sit down and plot a book, it's very clinical in most cases. Okay, you're sitting, you've got your form, you've got your function. So right, this is the beginning, there's the middle, that's the end. These are the characters, plot, come to the end, plot. All right, final, end of the book, that happened. Okay, to a poet, that's life in a nutshell. And poets don't tend to identify life as a predetermined sequence of events. We are on a timeline where other people think from A to B. We think a little bit from A, something happens and triggers a response. then it carries on further towards B, and something happens again. So you've got this whole timeline of little events that have created each individual story, that created each little writing, which as a whole maybe explains the poet.
Yeah.
It explains the character of the poet, where a normal storyline would be read a story from the beginning, read it to the end. Oh, nice book, put the book away. Poetry doesn't work like that, ever.
Yeah.
Because I don't think there's any book that can bring out the emotions that poetry can.
Yeah. I kind of think maybe people are put off poetry, well, writing poetry, because a lot of people enjoy poetry, and I also remind a lot of young people that poetry is really lyrics for their songs as well.
I've actually started that now. I've written 2 songs. One called 10,000 Leagues, written in the old sea shanty type of song.
Oh, wow.
That I'm busy with at the moment. It's a 5-verse song with the chorus built in, but it's very much similar.
And I think people are often put off because it feels like there always has to be a structure. You know, when we first taught poetry at school, it's the rhyming couplet, and then if you do this style, that has the rhythm of that line has to be different to the rhythm of this line, and that one has too many syllables. And I think the constraints that we were taught poetry in has almost scared us into writing it, instead of using that as a foundation only, but using it as an opportunity to expand beyond that.
I think you're quite right. I do not have any English qualifications whatsoever. I'm a matriculant. I've had a broad, I refer to myself a lot like Stephen King. I've done everything and anything, during my life for work. I'm a jack of all trades, a master of none. That's Stephen King's favorite word. But it's really, the format I take is personal. It's got nothing to do with structure. It's got nothing to do with studying poetry and determining what is the best consonant to put in there, or what is the best word and rhyming couplet. It flows, and what comes out goes down. Very simply put.
So you've written thousands of poems now, and if you go back and you look at your first few poems, do you go, oh, or do you, oh, I can improve that, or
I can tell you one thing. The first book I did was it came out the 4th of May 2021. Isn't that long ago? But I read that book now, and there's so many things I want to change in it, but I'm not going to change, because that first book to me is a lesson of how not to do it. Okay.
Well, no, for you, but for others, probably not. I think we also are quite critical of our own work, aren't we?
I am very critical of my own work, but yet I don't change anything. My belief is, the minute I change a verse, or the minute I take lines out or try to restructure, I'm breaking the very foundation of what I call poetry. Because to me, like I said before, it's not a structured exercise. If I change one verse of something I wrote, it could change the entire poem's meaning entirely. It could change the entire flow of the poem, which hit me at that particular time, because that's very important when I write. The flow is as important as the subject. It comes out in a certain form in my mind, and that's how it goes down. Like I said, it comes up and it goes down. That's it. Okay. I have had a lot of criticism, and I've actually, tell you the truth, I have knocked a bit of the critics out of the park that I've got to know over the years. They've actually come to accept my form of writing, and some of them even like it. So to me, it's been a growth process. As my writing is maturing, and I use the word maturing quite freely, because in 2020, I was an adolescent when it came to literature. Okay, I was a small child crawling, trying to find out what the hell I'm trying to say here. And it's taken me almost 3 years to find my voice, to find that style that automatically kicks in when I write, where I don't have to think to myself or second guess myself to say, I know I'm not going to change it. Damn, is that right? Okay, it doesn't feel right. No. Okay, and then I won't publish it. But then I when I'm doing my material research for the next book, I go back to all my previous poems and I see there's a lot of those poems that I actually like. It's relevant to the new book. And I'd look at it and I'd say, it's not actually that bad. It's not as bad as I thought it was. And those poems, it could be a punctuation change. It could be turning around of a word, a correction of a syntax, but never the meaning.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'd work it like that. And I'd use that poem. In fact, a lot of my poems are from that. But again, I'm an emotional writer. I believe in the fact that whatever I put on paper doesn't come from here. It comes from here.
I often wonder, some of the greatest creators, whether they are musicians or painters, it feels like their creativity is heightened because of trauma or because of challenges or difficult circumstances.
Yeah.
And I know that your life hasn't been plain sailing either, and I think that possibly has a real impact on how you see the world, because you're coming from a place of struggle, and overcoming the struggle has given you a sense of reality.
Spot on, utterly spot on. If you're a psychologist, 10 out of 10. Okay.
Yeah, I'll send you the bill. That's a very
Don't tell my
expensive
psychologist
session.
I told you that. Okay, that praise must go to her. Don't tell her that. You got it spot on there. To be honest with you, creativity stems from a well of pain when it comes to poetry. But pain can be seen in different ways. Pain is not necessarily a negative thing. A lot of people are telling me my work is very dark. Yes, I admit it's very dark. But if you read it, you'll find the message in there as well, in my poetry. By reading my feelings, very often you can determine what not to feel, of trying to determine how to avoid feeling like that, or to determine if you are feeling like that, how to do something about it. So it's emotional level and life experience, those two together would be the two biggest protagonists. I'll use that word protagonist because it's not a pleasant thing to go through. But those are the protagonists that give you the greatest gift when it comes to writing.
Wow, I love that. I love that.
Your enemy becomes your friend, in other words, when it comes to the art.
And actually, I think in life too, I think wisdom and life experience plays a big role in how we live our lives more positively. Because if you've had a crappy time and you've come out the other side, then there's something powerful in the way you live.
Exactly. A lot of poets tend to say that life is meaningless. Okay, we are just walking a preordained path into oblivion, basically. If you read some of their old classics as well, you get that impression. I think it's what put a lot of people off poetry as well, is that sense of fatalism in poetry. But that fatalism is actually vitally important. It's the sense of fatalism that gives you a sense of purpose as a poet. I don't know if that makes sense, but to me, it gives you purpose to take that and make something constructive out of it. For me, it's always been a dream to write a book. For instance, from school days, I actually wrote my first poem, to be honest with you, when I was 9 or 10. And I wrote a short story about the war, about vampires in the war, when I was about 12. But I was so critiqued by my peers at school and by teachers. And I'm not knocking my teachers, but it was a different age then, to be very honest with you. That I just gave it up. And I said, whoa, that's the reaction I'm getting. Hands up, I'm done with this. I'm not going to do it anymore. But I've always, on the other hand, been a voracious reader. I was reading things like Stephen King novels at the age of 8. I was devouring them. Dean Koontz, I was devouring it. So for me to read a book in 3 days, Stephen King book in 3 days, was nothing unusual. It's a bookworm. And I think that is what formed the basis of my literary abilities. To whatever extent I've got abilities, but I seriously think that it's important to remember that the dark always leads to light. My
I love
books were
that.
done. My books were done as I think that word used again. It's so apt, catharsis. It was to read through all my poetry through the last 3 years, or 2 years in 2021, and say, this still relates to me, or that still relates to me, or I love this, or I wrote this short kind of piece. This Willem said it so nicely, those short little stories, which I also write. It's not just poetry. I write it as free verse. But like the Templar, I've got a fascination with the Templars. When a thought comes into my mind, I grab something, I write a short little story down. And 5 minutes later, I'll be writing a dark poem. So the contradiction is always there.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to think that in that dark place, I've actually brought out 3 books.
But I also think that it must be one of those things where when you start writing something, you're fascinated by how your mind creates it and how your mind deals with it, because
Yes.
that's why writing is so therapeutic, because you sit down and you say, oh, I'm having a rubbish day. And then suddenly the stuff tumbles out that you didn't even realize either had an impact on you,
You are so
or
right.
was how your brain was processing that situation.
You are so right. I think it's got to do with the avoidance factor.
Mm.
We tend to avoid the things that upset us, and we tend to box it away, compartmentalize it, and okay, I can't hear you, I can't see you anymore, so you no longer exist. But we forget that comes back later to bite you at some stage in your life. And I think that's what happened with me as well, big time. Allowing yourself to open can only come through an experience of intense emotional confusion, of pain, of uncertainty. That's when you box all that up together and you start writing this poetry down, or the writing down at that stage, I can't really call it poetry, is that it starts taking on a context and a meaning on its own. It becomes another part of you, that where you can actually sit outside of it looking in, instead of having to scratch in the box and bring up all those, the old shadows, etc. But it allows you at that time to, once you've written it, to sit and read it. And very often when I write, I don't remember writing it. To be very honest with you, I'll sit with my phone. I love my phone. I don't know. I was tech challenged, but now I'm tech obsessed with cell phones. I'd sit and I've joined 2020. I joined Dark Poetry Society, one of the Facebook groups. 2 of my best friends that I've made now on Facebook, they run that particular group. But I think things like that have given me a doorway to be able to put it out there and not become so self-aware or self-critical about what I'm doing or what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
Because you are continuously getting reciprocation back.
Yeah.
And I think what they've done there is that continuous reciprocation, that continuous comment, that continuous push of people, like-minded people that are helping to push you along. That's brought me a long way to where I am now.
Yeah, I think because poetry, writing generally is quite solitary. So for you to have a community around you is incredibly valuable, because you do spend time on your own and you go, ew, that's a bit rubbish. And then someone goes, they see it differently. They see it through different eyes, and they don't see it from your perspective and your brain. You were saying about your first poem. So I wrote a poem when I was a child. We learned about limericks at school, and my
the man from?
my limerick was, there once was a girl called Dawn who never woke up in the morn. One day she awoke and gone were her folk, the poor little girl called Dawn. That was my first limerick. I was so proud of it.
I love limericks. We have a limerick competition every now and again on the Facebook pages, and it's actually quite fun. And it's also amazing what comes out of that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of messages that come out of that.
Absolutely. So, Gavin, do you have a poem that you'd like to read so that we've got a flavor of what you?
I chose not quite sure how we're going to structure this, but I selected 4 pieces, one from each book. But it's going to take too long to read, I think.
Yeah, so just pick one, and then we can get a flavor of what you've done, and then yeah, that would be brilliant.
Okay. I have just written a book along with a very good friend of mine up in who I met on Facebook, believe it or not. A lady by the name of Red Saunders. She's a very good poet, but she's also a brilliant artistic photographer. So in this case, she stepped aside from the poetry and she provided me 41 full-color poetry plates, which she has given me the great privilege of interpreting into my own words.
Amazing.
So what I've done, I've compiled a book now for the 2 of us. It's called Soul's Desire. It went out on Amazon yesterday, believe it or not.
Oh wow, perfect timing.
Yeah, we actually took me 3 weeks to compile it and get it ready. So I hope it's worthy of the effort. But a lot of it is previous work that had some form of reference to the pictures that I was looking at. That is one of my bigger gifts or greater gifts, is that I can look at something and I'm able to express it in words without really going in depth into the picture or with too much detail. I'm able to take out the core essence of what I'm seeing and put it into a poem. So this one here is actually a poem for a picture of a lady sitting outside in like runes with a hand up in the air with a bird, moon, etc., like twilight. And she was staring off into the distance. So this one is called A Moment Eternal. It's from the book. It's not a long poem, but it's one of my favorites.
Lovely.
For whom shall I surrender all? Should love be named for thee? That moment our gaze should blend, a love to set us free. In a moment to last eternity, a tableau frozen within the heart, let no one sunder heart's desire, nor tear our souls apart. Let only death tend with gentle hand, time's hold upon our skin, to render beauty to the end, where memory is laid within. Lay thy hand upon the withered brow in this moment of eternal sleep, for thy love renders grace with death is due, for a love we cannot keep. That is what came out of that particular picture.
Wow.
Like I said, I tend to write nowadays in the old style. It seems to come easy to me. It seems I can actually write emotionally. I'm actually more visually clear with the old style of writing than with modernistic forms. I've got one as well from Pieces of Mind, Eros Awakened.
Yes, let's hear that one.
Okay. It's called Temporal. Time stops and reality shifts so that angels dance in your eyes. The smile twists slightly as you bite your bottom lip, and your white teeth are stark contrast to the rubescent shine on your moist lips. I watch silently as you shake your hair loose, tumbling free over your shoulders. A cascade of auburn fire burning in the heat of the sun on high, forming a glowing halo around your head. Your red-tipped nails trail down your throat, both hands delicate and beautifully boned as they descend. I can see the tiny bones shifting under translucent skin, pulled taut, and then released as your fingers trace circular movements towards your chest. Your fingers reach your shirt buttons and stop there as you close your eyes and breathe deeply, slowly, so slowly. Your eyes open and lock onto mine. The angel is now madly cavorting within those dark black pupils, your iris heads of an angel's pin, as if trying to penetrate that part of me that is awake and alert. Primal urges flowing like devils through my blood and congregating with an unholy want in the pit of my stomach. Just breathe. That came to me when I was thinking of the erotic book that I was writing for book 3, Eros Awakened.
Do you think people who know you were surprised at what you came out with?
I think people that know me are gobsmacked. I'm
They're like,
gobsmacked.
where the
Can't
hell
open my
did
mouth
that?
sometimes.
Where the hell did that come from? Is that what they're all telling you?
And I'm being honest with you, Dawn. Even a lot of the posts on Facebook, when they met me, they're not the same person I was. I've grown. I've grown a hell of a lot. Willem said those short little stories, coming back to that. This is one of those. I was going to put this in a poem. I thought, no, as the thoughts are going through my mind, this thing is coming, it just doesn't make sense in a poem, so I'm going to write it as I'm thinking it. And that's what came out. There are other pieces where I can hear the rhyming scheme flowing out of my mind, and my hand just follows. And those are the ones I don't remember. It's when I'm finished and I sit and I look at it and hello, where'd that come from? Exactly that feeling. But what the hell just happened? Where was I?
Yeah.
That happens to me a lot. I go into my psychologist still looks at me funny when I say this to her. I say I go into a fugue state. I switch off. Everything around me switches off. My partner Lynn says I'm like I'm on a different planet. I'm not here. Okay, and that happens with a lot of my best writing. What I consider my best writing are those moments when I lose connection with going on around me, and it's just the pure thought and the pure emotion that's coming out and going onto the paper. It's
Wonderful.
It's scary. It's very scary. It's scary at times, to be very honest with you. It's something I don't have control over. I wish I could. I can sit and say, right, now I'm going to write a 110-page book. Look at this. Everybody leave me alone. I'm going to switch off. I wish I could do that. I
think that will hamper your creativity. And I think that's where, that's clearly where you find your inspiration. So Gavin, just before we go, could you just tell us how people can get hold of you, where they can find your books, so that people can go and explore?
All right. I will send you the links. I only got the new link this morning for the Amazon book, the new one. I will send you the link for all my books appear on the same link. So you'll see all 4 of them. There will be a 5th book coming as well, the 4th in the series of the Pieces of My Mind. That should be ready by end of the month.
I'll pop the link with the show notes so that at least everyone can click on that and go and have a look.
Perfect. All right. I'll give all that to you as soon as we're done. But all I can say is thank you for giving me this chance to have a chat with you guys. It's been a pleasure.
No, it's so lovely.
I'd have an interview like this in my life before, but anyway, it's...
Oh, fantastic. No, we'll do more of them. It would be lovely to chat to you in the future. Really? But I also, so if people just go to amazon.com and it'll divert to their local amazon.co.uk or .oz or AU or whatever. Yeah. And yeah, it would be great to connect with you. And yeah, can people find you on Facebook as well?
I am under Dark Impressions of Life, my one page. That's my darker poetry. And then under Pieces of My Mind is my other page. And then if they want to join, if they do belong to any of the other poetry Facebook clubs, have a look, because I belong to nearly all of them. Okay, so my work's all over the place. I'm also on TikTok. I have a TikTok page. I do videos as well of poetry now.
That is so modern. That's so modern and young.
I've tried to modernize. I've got, thank God, I've learned how to do videos now, graphic videos, and I've been using a lot of the images that Red gives me, and whatever I've created from that image, I put onto a video with extra effects, and I do a reading itself. I change my voice tone, and now I'm also doing horror. It's kind of fun. I've done 2 already on TikTok, where I do face changing monster faces, and that was all kind of epic horror type of Vincent Price type of voice and kind of thing. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. But on one of those, the first one I did, I had 149 strikes in one day on TikTok, which is pretty damn good.
So what's your TikTok profile?
It's called the Soul Whisperer.
Soul Whisperer.
Soul Whisperer. Yeah, the Soul Whisperer.
Okay. All right. I'll make sure that that goes into the show notes as well so people can go and find you on TikTok. Oh, Gavin, it's been a pleasure chatting to you. And I know that we fingers were crossed for load shedding, and I know that the signal isn't great and we can't see you on the screen, but at least we got to chat to you. And I know that I learned a lot, and I felt like I got to get into the mind of a poet, which I think is incredibly special. So thank you very much for joining me.
My pleasure, Dawn.
Have a lovely rest of your day. Chat soon.
Thank you. You too.